Hello, and a very warm welcome to Slow and Simple English. This is the show where we hit the pause button on the fast-paced world, take a deep breath, and explore the English language through the lens of interesting real-life stories. I'm your host, Anna, and I'm the curious learner here, the one who is always trying to find the right words to describe this crazy, beautiful thing we call life.
And I am David. I am joining you to help unpack those difficult concepts, look at the grammar and context, and perhaps most importantly, find the deeper meaning behind the words we use every single day. It is wonderful to be here and wonderful to be with all of you listening right now.
It's so great to get into this today. You know, our mission for today's deep dive is a really special one. We are going to look at a topic that touches almost everyone at some point in their adult lives. It's about dealing with unexpected life changes.
Right, specifically looking at that really scary moment of losing a job and then the exciting but terrifying possibility of finding a completely new path.
Exactly. And it's a heavy topic.
It is a heavy topic. It is one of those life moments where language becomes very important because our vocabulary often shrinks when we are panicked. We need to be able to articulate fear, hope, and risk. But before we get into the heavy psychological stuff, I have to ask, how was your morning? You look a little, I don't know, relieved.
You notice, well, to be honest, I had a bit of a chaotic start. I had a small problem, which feels pretty funny right now, but was incredibly stressful about an hour ago. I lost my keys.
Oh no, the classic morning disaster.
Huh?
Let me guess you were running late.
Of course I was running late. That's the only time keys decide to disappear, right?
Hmm.
I was running around like a headless chicken. I looked under the sofa. I checked all my coat pockets. I even looked in the fridge.
Wait, the fridge, were you planning to eat them for breakfast?
I was making a sandwich for lunch. I was distracted, and my brain just completely short-circuited. I thought maybe, just maybe, I put the keys next to the cheese.
Next to the cheese. That makes perfect sense in a panic.
Right, but no. Do you want to know where they actually were?
Please tell me.
They were in my shoe.
In your shoe. How does that even happen physically?
I have absolutely no idea. But when I went to put my foot in to leave the house, I felt something hard, and there they were.
Well, aside from being a really funny detail, that is actually a good reminder for our listeners. Sometimes we look for solutions in the most complicated places, like the fridge, when the answer is right under our feet. Literally in your case.
That is a much more philosophical take than I had, but let's go with it. It actually bridges us perfectly to the source material we are covering today. While my problem with the keys was small and funny, the story we are analyzing involves a much bigger problem.
It does. It is a story about a man named Daniel and his friend Sophia. And it starts with some very bad news.
Right, so let's set the scene. In the source material we are looking at today, the story begins with an inciting incident.
Yes, an inciting incident. That is a term from storytelling, which means the event that kicks everything into motion. It changes the protagonist's normal world.
And for Daniel, that incident happened just this morning. He meets his friend Sophia, and he drops a bombshell. He just says, I lost my job.
Just 4 words. I lost my job. Is a very common phrase in English. Notice he doesn't say my job was taken away or I was fired.
That's a really important distinction. Fired usually implies you did something wrong, doesn't it? Like you were late every day or you stole office supplies?
Correct. Fired carries a stigma of fault. But Daniel explains further. He says they closed my department. Now let's pause on that word, department.
It's a very common business word.
It is. A department is a specific section or division of a large company. So you might have the sales department, the marketing department, or the IT department.
So it's basically like his team.
Yes, but bigger. And the crucial thing here is the context of closing it. If a company closes a department, it is a structural decision. It means the company decided that this entire section didn't need to exist anymore.
Which means it has nothing to do with him personally.
Exactly. When a department closes, everyone in that group loses their job, regardless of how hard they worked or how good they were.
You know, that makes it almost scarier to me. It's completely out of your control. You can be the best employee of the month, but if the spreadsheet says the department is closing, you are out.
That is exactly it. It creates a profound feeling of helplessness. And Daniel's reaction really reflects that. When Sophia asks how he feels, he doesn't try to act tough. He says, honestly scared.
Honestly scared. I want to focus on that word honestly for a second. We use it all the time as a filler word, don't we? Like, honestly, I don't know, or honestly, I'm just tired.
Oh, we do.
Hmm.
But notice the specific context here. In English-speaking cultures and many others, we have a social script. When someone asks, how are you, you are supposed to say, I'm fine, or I'm okay.
Right. We are basically trained to hide our true feelings to be polite.
Exactly. It's like if you asked me if I liked a really ugly hat you were wearing.
Okay, if I came in wearing a giant neon green hat and asked, do you like it, what would you say?
I would probably say, oh, it's very bright, or it's certainly unique. I would be polite.
You would mask your actual opinion.
Right, I would mask it. But if I wanted to be truthful, I would say, honestly, it looks ridiculous. So when Daniel says honestly scared, he is dropping that social mask.
He is admitting vulnerability.
Yes, he isn't pretending to be brave for his friend. He is giving her the real, raw emotion.
And he has a really good reason to be scared. He mentions in the story that he worked there for 6 years. That is a long time in the modern workforce.
It is a huge chunk of life. When you work somewhere for 6 years, you have a routine. You know the people. You know exactly where the good coffee machine is. You completely rely on that paycheck.
And then in one morning, just poof, it's gone.
It is a massive shock to the system. He tells Sophia he feels like he doesn't know what to do next. He is in a state where he cannot see the future.
So Sophia tries to be the optimistic friend. She's definitely a glass half full kind of person. She says, maybe this is a new beginning.
But Daniel isn't buying it. He said it doesn't feel like one.
And I think that is so relatable for anyone listening. When you are in the middle of a crisis, it is really hard to see the rainbow. You just see the storm.
Absolutely. He is feeling the end, not the beginning. But this is where the dynamic of the conversation shifts in the source material. Sophia stops just trying to comfort him and starts acting a bit like a life coach.
Yeah, she asks a question that completely changes the direction of the story. She asks, have you ever really enjoyed that job?
This is the critical turning point in their chat, because up until now we assume losing the job is a poor tragedy. But Sophia is digging deeper. She is challenging that base assumption.
And Daniel's answer is pretty surprising. He says, not really. It was safe.
It was safe. Let's really unpack that concept. Safety versus happiness.
It sounds like a good thing, right? We all want to be safe. We want to be able to pay our rent. We want to buy groceries.
Of course, financial security is a basic human need. But here, safe is being used almost as a negative thing.
Because it implies boredom.
Exactly. It implies boredom and a lack of passion. He wasn't staying at that company because he loved the work he was staying, because he was afraid to leave.
The source material brings up a really interesting point here. It suggests that staying in a job where you aren't happy is actually a risk in itself.
Yes, this is a concept often called opportunity cost in economics. We usually think of risk as doing something wild, like skydiving or gambling all your savings.
But there is a silent risk in staying put.
A huge silent risk. You risk your happiness. You risk looking back at your life and realizing you spent 6 years or maybe 20 years doing something you frankly didn't care about.
That is a heavy thought. It reminds me of the analogy they used in the story about the swimming pool.
Right, they compare risk to jumping into a swimming pool.
When you jump into a pool, you don't know if the water is cold. That is a risk.
Right.
But it's a very small risk. You might shiver for a minute.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But starting a business, changing your entire career path, that is a big risk. You might lose money. You might fail publicly. It is much scarier than cold pool water. Yeah. It's more like jumping into the ocean at night.
And that is exactly what Daniel reveals next. He admits that he has always talked about starting his own business, but he never actually did it. He called it just a dream.
Because dreams are risky. He viewed his dream as something impossible because he was addicted to the safety of his boring, routine job.
But Sophia says something wonderful here. She looks at him and says, maybe this is your moment.
I love that phrasing, your moment.
Yeah.
It implies that the bad thing, losing the job, was actually a necessary event.
Like it was fate.
Yes, like the universe or fate clearing the path, because Daniel was simply too scared to do it himself.
That brings us right to the fear of the unknown. We have this dream, this exciting possibility, but fear just stops us in our tracks. You know, this actually reminds me of a personal story. Well, it's a story I borrowed from the source material, but it feels very true to my own experience growing up.
Oh, really? What is the story?
When I was a child, I desperately wanted to be a professional piano player. I didn't just want to play a little bit. I wanted to be a concert pianist playing on big stages.
That takes an incredible amount of dedication.
It does, and I loved music. I would practice at home for hours and hours. But whenever I thought about doing it professionally or even just playing in a small recital at school, I completely froze.
Why is that? What stopped you?
I was terrified of the audience. I thought, what if I make a mistake? What if I hit the wrong note and everyone in the room laughs at me?
The fear of humiliation. Psychologists call that the spotlight effect. We tend to think everyone is watching us closely, just waiting for us to fail.
Exactly. I was so scared of people laughing that I never really pursued it. I let the dream go entirely because the risk of embarrassment felt way too big.
That connects perfectly back to Daniel. He is a grown adult, not a child sitting at a piano, but the feeling is exactly the same. He asks Sophia, "What if I fail?"
It is the universal question, isn't it? What if it all goes wrong?
But Sophia brilliantly flips the script on him. She asks, "What if you succeed?"
It's such a simple question, but we so rarely ask it. We are practically wired to look for danger.
We are. Evolutionarily speaking, our brains are designed to keep us alive, not to make us happy. We constantly look for tigers hidden in the bushes. We don't naturally look for hidden treasure. But in modern life, we really need to train ourselves to ask, what if it works out?
This brings us to two very important vocabulary words that appear in this part of the story: succeed and regret.
Let's define those clearly for our listeners. Succeed means to reach a goal, to win, to accomplish what you set out to do.
So in Daniel's case, it would mean building a business that actually supports him financially.
Correct. And regret.
Regret is that awful feeling of sadness about something you did not do or something you wish you could change about the past. It's a very heavy, lingering emotion.
The story uses a pretty funny everyday example for this too, the pizza example.
Ah, yes, the pizza regret, a classic modern tragedy.
Walk us through it.
Well, imagine there is one piece of pizza left in the box. You really want it. But you don't take it because you want to be polite to everyone else in the room. Then someone else walks in and just casually eats it.
And you just sit there watching them chew.
Exactly, and you feel that sharp pang of annoyance. You think, I should have eaten that. That is regret. But it is a small regret. It lasts for maybe 5 minutes.
Right. But Sophia's talking about big regrets, life-altering regrets.
The ones that keep you awake at night.
Exactly. Imagine being 80 years old, sitting in your rocking chair and thinking, I really should have started that business. I should have at least tried. That is a heavy regret. That kind lasts forever.
Much heavier than the pizza. And I think that is what finally wakes Daniel up in the story. He realizes that the long-term pain of regret is actually worse than the short-term fear of failure. He says, I don't want to regret this moment.
So he decides to try. He crosses that mental threshold. But then almost immediately the doubt comes creeping right back. He says, I don't feel ready.
The not ready feeling, is that ever a real thing?
It is a complete myth, the not ready myth. We convince ourselves that there will come some magical day where we wake up and feel 100% prepared, confident, and knowledgeable.
Does that day ever actually come?
No. Never. Think about the very first day of university, or the first time you ever traveled to a foreign country alone. Did you feel ready?
No way. I felt like a lost child. I wanted to turn around and go straight back to my bedroom.
But you did it anyway, and you learned by doing. Competence comes after you start, not before. Sophia tells him no one ever feels ready. You just have to take action.
So Daniel comes up with a practical strategy. He says, I'll start small.
This is very wise advice. The phrase starting a business sounds massive and overwhelming. It sounds like renting a skyscraper, hiring 50 people, and spending $1 million.
Which is terrifying and totally impossible for most of us.
Right. But starting small breaks that monster down into manageable pieces. It means maybe just working from your kitchen table for a few months, maybe calling one single client, maybe just setting up a basic website.
It changes the task from climb Mount Everest to just put on your hiking boots.
Precisely. As Daniel says, that's all you need, just a first step.
And by the end of their conversation, the whole narrative of his day has completely changed. At the beginning, losing the job was a total disaster. By the end, they decide it might actually be a push.
A push. It's a great noun usage in this context. Usually a push is a very physical action, a push the heavy door open. But here, it's a metaphorical shove from the universe.
It's life saying, move forward. You are stuck, so I am going to make you move.
It brilliantly reframes the victim mentality of, I lost my job, into a sort of heroic mentality of, I was pushed toward my destiny. It gives Daniel his agency back.
It really is an inspiring story. And it makes you think about our own lives. It actually makes me wonder about you.
Oh no, I know that tone of voice. What are you wondering?
Well, we've been talking all about Daniel's big dream. If you were to start a business, a risky dream business, what would it be?
I have actually thought about this quite a bit. I think I would start a service that delivers warm, fresh cookies to people's houses at midnight.
Cookies at midnight? That sounds amazing. Everyone needs a late night snack. But knowing you, I think I see a major flaw in the business plan.
A flaw? What flaw? The market demand for midnight cookies would be incredibly high.
The demand isn't the problem, it's the supply chain. Wouldn't that be a very risky business for you personally?
Why is that?
Because I think you would eat all the cookies in the delivery car before you ever arrived at the customer's house.
You know, that is a very fair point. The smell of fresh chocolate chip cookies in a small enclosed car, I wouldn't stand a chance.
You'd be your own best customer, but you wouldn't make a single penny.
It would be an absolute financial disaster. My waistline would expand and my bank account would shrink to zero. Perhaps I should just stick to explaining English grammar. It is much, much safer.
Probably a good idea. Stick to the nouns and the verbs. So before we wrap up this deep dive, let's do a quick recap of the key vocabulary and concepts we collected from Daniel and Sophia's story today.
We had quite a few good ones. We started with department understanding that it means a structural section of a company, and when it closes, it's a business change, not a personal failure.
We talked about, honestly, using it not just as a quick filler word, but to signal that you are dropping the polite social mask to share real, raw feelings.
We discussed the hidden trap of safe versus risky, how safe can mean financially secure but emotionally boring, and how staying in a job you hate is actually a passive risk to your happiness.
We had to succeed to reach your ultimate goal and regret, the deep, lingering sadness of not doing something. And we learned how the fear of regret can actually be a much stronger motivator than the fear of failure.
And finally, the push, the external force that moves you forward when you are too scared or stuck to move yourself.
A really great collection of words for our listeners today. And as we close, I want to leave everyone listening with a bit of a challenge. We want you to be a Sophia for your friends this week. If you know someone going through a hard time, help them see the new beginning instead of just the end.
And ask yourself the tough question. What is your dream? Have you ever taken big risk? Or are you staying somewhere just because the water feels safe?
And remember, even learning English is a risk in a way. You risk making mistakes. You risk sounding a bit funny sometimes when you try a new word.
But if you don't take that risk, if you don't open your mouth and speak, you will never succeed. You just have to start small.
Just like listening to this deep dive, that is a fantastic first step. Now, before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
Oh, I like these. What is it?
Think about this. We always talk about external forces pushing us. A company closing a department, an unexpected event. But what if it's not entirely external? What if losing a job or a sudden change is sometimes your own subconscious finally forcing you into a corner because it knows you're ready to chase that dream, even if your conscious mind is still terrified?
That is a deep thought. Are we secretly creating our own pushes because we are tired of being safe?
Exactly. Something to explore on your own. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this story gave you a little push in your own life.
Thank you, everyone. Keep learning, keep speaking, and don't be afraid to jump into the pool.
Goodbye for now.
Goodbye.